And hello, everyone. You are on Fathom PR, and you will notice my co host is here, but my guest is not yet here. Shelby Hancock, my amazing colleague and founder of Music Industry Entryway. I would love for you to tell people what that is about.
Industry or already in there to get their foot in the door of the industry.
I'm sorry. We didn't have great volume for that. So can you repeat what you just said? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
Music Industry Entryway is a website that has a bunch of helpful music industry resources for aspiring and current music industry professionals. I had slowly started to find some resources like the Digitalog, Amethyst Collab, Girls Behind the Rock Show, and I just thought how amazing they are. So I kind of just researched some more and compiled a whole list. And I hope that it helps people who want to get in the music industry get their foot in the door.
yeah. I mean, I think that's so great what you did because, I think that too many people just do the research for themselves and don't share it. And, that's unfortunate. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work with you because you're so generous with your time and your resources and you're helping a lot of people.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just feel like sometimes it's either people find it and they don't share it, or the people don't know how to do the research to find all of them, or they find one or two where why not just have a like one-stop shop where
Yeah.
everyone can kind of just find it all.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah, I mean, I it's funny. Ralph will be here soon, and but we're kind of getting started without him. But he's actually a client of ours, and
Yes.
going to be loving interviewing him because I always have questions for our clients, and seldom do I get them answered. So
Yeah,
that's kind of good.
it's perfect
Um,
timing.
yeah, and we um, we started working with him recently, and oh, I want to make sure that people in chat can hear. Rick, can you hear now? I know Ro has is able to hear now and see. Okay. Well, hopefully the stream is going to last. As soon as Ralph comes, we're going to let him in. We have a lot of technology that we're starting to work with. And, Shelby, what are you hearing from your contemporaries that people are wanting to utilize tech wise? Are people still coming to Clubhouse?
Um, Yes and no. I know that I personally utilize Clubhouse a lot. I have my music industry entryway club on Clubhouse that I have like a bunch of regulars go to, and I go to a bunch of rooms where there are regulars that come all the time. I know since they opened it to Android users that I've seen like kind of an influx of some new users, but at the same time, I've kind of heard down the grapevine that Clubhouse is dying out in a way. Um, but I don't know. I find myself not going to as many random rooms as I would before. Now I go to like my set rooms that are always scheduled and happen every week from the people that I know.
Yeah.
So I don't really know like what is going to be happening with Clubhouse, if there's going to be a new app that comes and evolves from it or what.
Yeah, I thought it was a matter of time, frankly.
Yeah,
When they announced the Android thing, and then when, quarantine's over and people are out and about. And, I thought it was a matter of time until it died out.
yeah,
And, we rode that wave. It was really good when there was nothing to do.
exactly.
And it was really good because I got to meet you through it.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah, I just don't know when people start returning to their jobs, like are just busy all the time, when people who are on touring go back on tours. I just can't necessarily see it still being the same. I can see college students probably utilizing it, because I know like there's been a big wave of I feel like college students that have been coming in.
Mm,
Um, I can see it maybe going still like kind of being good through summer,
yeah.
while a lot of the college kids are on break and there's still not tours happening. People are still working remotely. But I think as the fall comes, people are starting to go back to the office, going on the road, going back to class. So I don't know. I guess time will tell and we'll see,
Yeah.
but I'm interested to see what will happen.
Are you ready to go back to shows?
Yes, I it was so weird. Someone was talking to me about the Billie Eilish tour. They were like, "Oh, the tickets sold out in 30 minutes." I used to be hopping on when tickets would go on sale all the time, and I don't even keep track of it anymore. I'm like, normally I would be in line, like online, and I don't remember the last time I bought concert tickets. And now I'm like, ooh, I have to like put that in my budget now. Like I took the like concert tickets out of my budget, and now I'm gonna have to start like
Oh, right.
saving the money for it. Yeah. I have I think two or three shows that were rescheduled and I think they're supposed to happen this fall. Like I'm going to the Hella Mega tour.
What is that?
Um Fall Out Boy, Green
Oh,
Day, and oh my gosh, who was the third band? Fall Out Boy, Green Day,
oh,
and
and
some
Ralph will
other
be
big band that I've been to before.
shortly.
And then I'm supposed to go to My Chemical Romance tour because they
What
got
is
back
this, the
together and I was like,
90s?
they got back together and I'm like, I am going to see My Chemical Romance in concert.
Yeah.
The Hella Mega tour. Oh, and Weezer. That's the other band.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a good concert. It's a huge stadium tour.
Yeah, Ralph should be here any minute. He texted me that he didn't have the link, even though I sent it to him. So he will be here. Yeah. So, I don't know if I'm ready to go to concerts. I was gonna go to Lollapalooza, but now I don't have to. So I'm thinking maybe fall.
Yeah, I'm still like antsy about it. Even though I'm fully vaccinated and everything, I have both of them are rescheduled till September or August.
Mm,
So I still have time. I don't know if they'll get rescheduled again or not. Who
yeah.
knows? And I'm very like iffy too, especially because I'm in Florida.
Yeah.
So a lot of Florida is not vaccinated.
Yeah,
And
that's
they
what I
do
would
not take
worry
precautions.
about.
Yeah. And then I got my second vaccine in January. So I got mine really early. So I'm hoping by that time there's like a booster or something because it's like 90% for 6 months. And I don't know, they don't really know after 6 months, I don't
Right.
think. But so
Ah,
like, I don't know if it's gonna
and
kind
our
of,
guest has arrived.
perfect.
Yay. All right. Hang on 1 second and I will let him in. All right. And yeah, I'm worried too about it, but you know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Um yeah,
And
Ralph Sutton, professional
hello there.
Hello.
photographer.
Hey there, everybody.
Yeah, and founder of the Gas Digital Network.
That
Yes.
is
Uh,
all.
yeah, this is Shelby, my co-host. She is working with me
Hello.
and wanted to chat with you as well.
Sure.
Um, we've been going on and on about shows coming back and if we're willing to risk it or not. And she's in Florida, so I don't blame her if she doesn't want to.
Well,
Yeah.
Florida, from what I understand, there has been no COVID in Florida whatsoever. I believe it missed Florida
Yeah,
completely.
honestly, I feel like I'm crazy down here. Like I like was social distancing, like wearing a mask at the beginning, and I felt crazy because no one wear a mask. And then now they're starting to not wear masks
Yeah.
again because it's optional.
And
You know
Rose
what's great
saying,
is,
oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
I read this, which is fascinating, is that the anti-vax community didn't want to wear a mask in the beginning to show that they are, against COVID and restrictions and whatnot. But those same people believe that the vaccine gives you cameras and things in your body to track you, and that you can spew it, and that spew could go into you, and then you get a camera. So now anti-vaxxers are wearing masks to protect themselves from people who got the vaccine.
Yeah, that
Really?
sounds about Florida.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's fascinating. Love it. Love everything about it.
Yeah. Well, Shelby, you want to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. I just kind of wanted to ask you about how you got where you are. What kind of path was it heading to where you were? So if you just give us a little.
Sure, I'll try and cliff note it because I am a very
Yes.
old man, so
Yes,
there's a
please.
long history there. Coincidentally, or rather, not ironically, but yeah, coincidentally, I did go to school for communications and business. So it sounds like that was the plan. But really, in my third year of college, when you need to pick a major, I had been screwing around and I had no idea. And I just looked and saw how close am I to which major, and it ended up being communications and business. So I picked that. 10 years later, it made sense, but in the beginning, it did not make sense. Very quickly, I was a strip club DJ for a long time. I worked in rock clubs as a promoter. Started working at a restaurant. Was still staying at the strip club, and then one day I heard a guy on the mic that sounded like, oh, this guy has microphone skill, but doesn't know what he's doing as a strip club DJ. So I went up and started talking to him because I was the night guy, he was the day guy. He was a radio guy, and he wanted to make money in strip clubs, and I'm a strip club guy that wants to do radio. So I said, I will teach you everything if you get me one meeting with someone at the radio station. So we made that deal, and then I got audition, and I got hired to be an overnight guy from midnight to 6 in the morning, an hour from my house for $6 an hour. And I did it for about 2 months. And I'd also leave at 6 in the morning, drive an hour to my restaurant job that started at 8 in the morning, and then just work through the day. It was horrible, right?
Whoa.
But I had this idea for a radio show. You're too young to know these bands, but in the late 90s, it was 99, nobody played Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, Motley Crue, Van Halen on the radio. It was a dead genre. And as a strip club DJ, when I played that music, people would go crazy. So I said, this is missing from radio. There was no internet radio yet or anything like that. So I pitched the idea to the radio station, give me a show doing 2 hours of let me choose the music. And they said, well, you've been in radio for 2 months, dude. I can't give you a show. But if you can convince one of the radio guys to do it with you, then yes. So the guy that I knew from the strip club, I talked him into it. We do the show. 6 months later, we had the #1 show in the market on that station for that time slot. Moved to the #1 station in Jersey. 6 months later, again, #1 station in the market, and #2 in New York City, because you could be picked up in New York. And then I said, let me try and get the show syndicated. I didn't know what that meant, but I found some packages around the studio that were syndication shows. So I just copied it and pretended we were this big show looking for syndication, signed with a company. And I learned the first few months there was a big difference of being syndicated and being syndicatable. So we were available, but why the hell would they take me? No one knew who I was. We had a stupid show in Jersey. No one was taking us. So one day we had this idea. We finished the show Saturday night at midnight. We took his my co-host's truck, drove down to Miami. The whole way down, we're listening to the radio. Anybody that was playing anything rock and roll, AC/DC, Guns or whatever, I wrote down the station, the town we were in, and made a list. We had like 50, 60 stations by the time we got to Miami. Stayed in Miami for 2 days. I called every one of those places, made 7 to 10 meetings, but snaked back up the East Coast, signed 5 stations that week, came back right in time for the next Saturday to do our next episode. And now we had 5 stations besides ours, eventually leading to that show called The Tour Bus, got to about almost 100 stations nationwide, right?
Wow.
And then, I'm sorry if I'm going so long. You go
No.
about 6, 7 years ago, it was very obvious to me radio was dying, that no one gave a shit, excuse my language, I don't know if you can curse here, about radio. So I said, I got to figure out what next. And the way I knew this was I was hosting this event called the M3 Rock Festival for about 4 years in a row. And the first year, they were thrilled to have me. It was the local radio station that was sponsoring it. And then I was right next to them behind the stages. As I'm sure Jamie knows this, they call like Radio Row. Everybody tries to get the band as they come off stage to do interviews. Obviously, the further down the row, the less likely that band is going to keep going down the path. So the bigger the shows would be first, second, third position, and then there'd be whatever. So my first year there, I was second position, then third, then fourth. And then on the last year, I was the last guy there. I'm like, oh, they don't give a shit about my show anymore. So that was the realization I need to figure out what next. So I decided, let me start a podcast because my co-host was a comic. He had suggested it to me the year before. I was hosting a thing called Shiprocked, and he was the comic on it. And we were talking together about it, 10 bands on a boat and about 6,000 people. And I was the host, he was the comic. And he had already had a podcast, and he suggested it to me. And my douchebag response was, podcasting is for people that can't do radio. I'm doing radio, so thanks, but no thanks. And then the next year, when we did it again, I'm like, remember that podcast? I said, I'll do it with you. And we started, and we came up with Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. We started about 6.5 years ago. I remember jokingly thrilling myself saying, imagine we get 1,000 people to listen to the show every month. How crazy would that be? And now SDR gets about 100,000 listeners per episode. And that launched the network about 1.5 years, 2 years later, because I took the business model of my radio show, which was each station only had maybe 10,000 listeners, but you put 100 stations together, we had 250,000 people listening every week. So let's get a few small shows like mine. At the time, we had like 5,000, 6,000 listeners. Let's get a bunch of those together, and then we could sell those packages, because I still was doing the radio show, and the advertising company said they would pay for the ads. So that's how that started. And it was this is my bedroom, my second bedroom. We did it here. And so we started just doing it there. I figured out how to do a multi-camera shoot. At the time, 6-7 years ago, it wasn't easy. My closet here is filled with about $8,000 worth of failed experiments to try and get it to work. And we eventually got it all working. And then about 3.5 years ago, we opened up the studios in New York City. And that's when it really, in my head, got serious, because then we were paying rent. We built studios. We started growing the business. Now we have 22 shows, several million listeners a week. I'm not exactly sure how many right now. And we also have a podcast rental business. We do ad sales for not just the shows on our network, but for like 20 shows off network. And we have a podcast merchandising business that's the same for all the shows on the network and all the shows off network. Currently, there's probably 100 people that work at Gas Digital. And that'll happen. That's my last 30 years in 5 minutes.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
20 years, actually. 20 years in 5 minutes. 22.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I left out a lot, but I don't think you want to hear about my erectile dysfunction.
Oh my God. Well, we did see you on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, which was amazing.
Yeah, that was in 2004. I was 34 at the time, and I just shot The Reunion, which is coming out in 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, and that came from at the time I had a female co-host. My original co-host left, and I had a female co-host, and she saw the first episode, and she came into the studio and said, this is the best idea I had in a long time. We're going to get you on the show, and it's going to do wonders for the radio show. So I found the worst possible picture of me I could find, and I made the application was online. I made it as funny as I could. I filled it out on a Saturday. They called me that Monday, and that's how we got on the show. Yeah,
and it was a really bad picture.
Yeah, it was a really bad picture. I found it recently. I found the picture. I was hosting this thing called the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, right? So I had like a do-rag on. I had a leather jean vest on. I looked ridiculous. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. And I just sent it in, and they were like, yeah, you need help.
Yeah, your brother seemed thrilled that they did it.
Yeah. I still it's funny. And we talked about this on The Reunion, that a lot of their lessons did stick with me, but sometimes you need to be reminded of those things because life gets in the way, worlds change, and you just forget. Like, I still will very often leave the house without ever looking at myself in the mirror. Like, I just don't, who the fuck knows what I look like? I'm going out, and I will try to remind myself, oh wait, you're going in public. Make sure you look somewhat respectable, but I do forget that a lot. It is who I am.
And
for The Reunion, did you meet the new guys?
Oh, yeah.
No, it was the original cast. It was, to be honest, there's a show. It's called Reunion Road Trip, and it's their first season. And they take a classic cast of a show and reunite them for one more episode. So it's Scrubs, All My Children, Queer Eye. I forget who the other shows are, but the second episode is Queer Eye. I forget. I think the first episode is Scrubs, maybe. I don't know, but. So they get the original cast together. It was a disaster shot. Like, the filming was awful. I sat in a room by myself for 7 hours
Ugh.
with no internet, no phone, nothing. Just every 30 minutes they'd come in, open the door, like, all right, we're gonna be ready for you in a few minutes. And then that's it. And for 7 hours. And then finally I got there at 11. We started shooting at around 6:15 at night.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. And I got nothing. They promised me a bunch of clothes. They promised me and I got nothing. And they screwed me on money too. But you know, it wasn't the guys. The guys are awesome.
Yeah. Carson loved you.
Yeah, Carson's great. Carson and I have stayed friends over the years, like acquaintances, you know, where he's done my radio show once, he's done my podcast once, and you know, we probably talked for an hour when I was there, and he's the one that, you know, we follow each other on Instagram, and he's the one that told me once they got the release date of the reunion special, he's like, oh, it's coming out June 17th. I'm like, oh, great, thanks. So they're all super nice guys. They all are super nice guys.
It seemed like a good time, really, because I rewatched it. I had watched it years ago. Because when I met you, I think I watched it. And then I watched it recently when you told me about the show. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I forgot how good this was. I forgot how great they got along, you know?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Their most watched episode ever. A lot of it had to do with timing, but also Vince Neil from Motley Crue being cool enough to allow us to have him on and film the thing. Plus, it was at a strip club / rock club. So there was a lot of hot girls in it. So it had it got guys that normally wouldn't have watched that show to watch that show because they heard strippers and Motley Crue. All right, screw it. I'm going to watch this episode, you know? So it did really well. And for a year, I knew what it felt like, very briefly, to be an A-list celebrity. Ooh, I lost you guys.
No.
Oh, there we go. You're back. Sorry. I knew it very briefly. The camera went blank for a second. It was weird. I knew what it was like to be an A-list celebrity because every time I left the house, cars would pull over. It was that popular of a show.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Jumping out, asking me to sign things. I got out of a speeding ticket. A cop looked at my license, goes, you were too good on that show and let me go. Right. And then also I did date that girl for a while after the show.
Oh, wow.
So anytime we went out together, it was like, oh my God, like people they would move tables and say like they did anything to make us happy. It was crazy. It was wild.
That's great. Now, the hustle that it took for you to put together your network is so admirable. I mean, I didn't, when I came with William Duvall,
right,
and we came to do your show, I was so impressed by your offices.
Yeah, it's crazy that I feel like I haven't slept in 4 years, you know, because it's constant and it's an interesting growth because what keeps happening is we get more listeners, so the expenses go up, right? And so what we do is then we need to we should bring on more shows so we could get more listeners. And then that happens, and then the expenses go up. So it's just an interesting ebb and flow of trying to figure out that balance of enough shows to where subscribers feel happy, but not too much where we have way too much staff. Because now you've been there, Jamie. We have the studio space. There's 3 spaces there on that side.
Right.
We have the other side. There's 3 spaces. We have the 2 ends. The other end is for the ad sales and merchandise. And that side is the creative side where it's just the production stuff. But now we're making a deal, hopefully, to get the middle space because we've outgrown it. We need another studio and we need more workstations. So I'm hoping to make that deal before the end of summer.
It's really amazingly impressive. Like I was so impressed, and I kind of didn't have a concept of it because you're so humble and play it down sometimes.
Well, I appreciate
it.
But nice.
You know, you really have done something amazing with that network. I mean, Jamie Josta, Rob Flynn, you know.
Yeah. There's a big one coming on soon that I can't say on the show. But if it happens, it would be fucking incredible. I can't believe that we're even talking about it. And apparently he's recording the first episodes the first week of June. Wow. And if that happens, it's gonna be a huge one. Do you edit this? If you edit this, I'll tell you who it is. I don't know if you edit this or not.
No, this is live. So,
all right, so then I won't say
yeah,
it. All right,
worry
I won't say it. I'll tell you afterwards.
No, it's not live.
Yeah. And
but
Shelby and I were talking about your variety of guests. Shelby, you wanna?
Yeah, I wanted to say, see, out of all of your guests, who was your most favorite, and who was would you say is the most out there?
Oh, for SDR specifically, it's
yeah,
I go
for the
out
podcast.
of my way. I hate to say that I do use this as a model, is what I loved about Howard Stern growing up, right? Is that you never knew what you were going to get that morning. Is it going to be a serious interview? Is it going to be a rock band? Is it going to be a comic? Is it going to be some crazy sex thing? You didn't know, right? So that area is where I wanted to focus on. I didn't want to just do rock bands. I didn't want to just make it one thing. So I go out of my way to try and get unique guests and try and have people that hopefully have a following, have something interesting to say, and are not what people expect. But of course, you have to back that up also with rock bands and porn stars and comics, or people are not going to. So it's finding that happy medium. And Jamie, I know I drive people crazy trying to book guests for the show and get the right guest.
17 people called me to book a member of Motley Crue.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's nuts. But that's just how you got to do. But the ones that stick out for me are not the ones that are the most logical for the show.
I really enjoyed the comedy writer that you had on recently.
Yeah, Alan Zweibel it was brilliant, man. But I would say, like, so to me, a personal moment that I had a smile on for an hour was Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I've been a fan of for 20 years, like 15 years, since I think it was, I forget what year it was. It might have been 2004 when Pluto got demoted, right, to be being
such a hard year.
Right, hard year for Pluto. So from that year on, I loved the guy because I watched an interview with him where all these little kids were writing him letters saying, "Please don't take my favorite planet away." And he was like, "It's not my fault. It's science." And it just made me laugh how he was. And I followed his career, I've read his books, went to go see him speak a bunch of times. So to get him on the show, and my opening question to him was, "Listen, I've followed you your whole career. I'm such a fan of you. Like, why the fuck would you come on a show called Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll? Like, why would you do that? You shouldn't do that, right?" And he had such a great answer. He said, when I go on science podcasts, they're already on my team. I'm not changing minds. I go on shows that people would not expect me to be on, and hopefully I change a few minds. I was like, well, that is a brilliant answer. And then follow-up question, what kind of stupid middle name is deGrasse? And he had a good question, good answer for that too. Wow. So that one, you got to listen to the show. And then Mark Cuban was the other one. I was thrilled to talk to Mark Cuban, big fan of his forever. Yeah. So those are not stereotypical SDR guests, but those two stick out as like, wow, it was great to sit and talk with them.
Yeah. And then for your radio show, like, what would you say was your best for the interviews?
So the moment that felt the most surreal for sure was Ozzy Osbourne.
Wow.
He's so major, Shelby, your grandparents would listen to Ozzy Osbourne. It's a rock band from the 70s.
Yeah.
And what happened was I had to go to Sony to do it. He didn't come in the studio. They were invited. It was a very interesting thing. 10 people got 5 minutes each. And that was it. And he sat in a chair. He's older. What are you going to do? And the way it worked was all of us go in a room, and then they just hit record, and then they're sending everybody the same tape, and you take out your 5 minutes just to do it, because fortunate enough that we got to even interview him. But while I'm waiting, I'm sitting like outside the recording studio, and there's a bowl of fruit there, and I'm just leaning against the wall. And Ozzy came out, and he grabbed an apple off the table, and he just leaning next to me, eating an apple. I'm like, this is fucking crazy. I'm sitting next to Ozzy. I'm standing against the wall of Ozzy. If someone walked in, it looked like we're friends. It was great. And that, to me, was like such a surreal moment that when we started the radio show, I thought, imagine we get a band to play one day in the studio. And then we put out records we released a CD of 12 in-studio performances from the radio show. And wow. I would say, I think I talked to every single rock band I ever wanted to speak to in the 12 years that show. Maybe not the exact guy, like I never got Axl Rose on. I never got James Hetfield on, but, I had members of both bands on. Right. So if you go by band, I don't think there was ever a band that I never got in that. If you look at the list, it was predominantly like 80s rock. And if you look at the list of the top 100 80s rock bands of all time, they all came on the show. At least at one point.
That's amazing. That just shows like the huge growth of the show and everything. Like
that show was nuts. It was a big show. I remember a great quote from when he was still alive, Kevin DuBrow from a band called Quiet Riot. He said, if you're going to release a rock record these days, you got to go do the tour bus. And I was like, oh, that's so cool that he would say that, And it just was that for a while. It was the nationally syndicated rock radio show. I don't think there was one. Dee Snider had one also, but Dee would never play new music. So his might have had more stations, but we were the only one that would bring on new music and play new music. So that separated us from his show.
Now, do you guys share booking staff like with your other sister brother podcasts? Like
the other podcasts on the network? What'll happen is, and this might have happened with you, the band HU, is that right? Did you come to me with them?
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes people will hit me up with a guest because I'm paying for the guest bookings, right? Usually. My booker is who I work with. And if they come to me with someone that I feel is not right for me, but might be right for someone else on the network, I will give them that booking, but not if I'm paying for it. You know, it's like sometimes I'll say to a guy, hey, like there was a Trump impressionist guy. He had a TV show for a while, right?
Okay.
And he wanted to come on as Trump. And I felt like that doesn't work for me, but there's a political show that could work for him. So I sent it out to, hey, you guys want to book him? He didn't want to book him, but things like that, or maybe it's a comic that doesn't really like to get too dirty. So there's a cleaner shows or a relationship expert. I might send it to another. You know, if it's something that doesn't fit me, I'm not going to say. I'll see if there's somebody it might work for, and that's really. But I don't really, unless sometimes, which has happened a few times, someone will come to me and say, "Hey, look, we're trying to get on as many shows as possible."
Right.
So then I'll say, "Okay, yeah, sure." But generally, because I'm paying for the bookings, I keep them on SDR.
Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to ask was, can you tell us about Good Sugar and how that came about?
Sure. So, I know, Jamie, you live in New York, Jamie, right?
Yeah.
And Shelby, do you live in New York or no?
I live in Florida.
In Florida. Okay, so you wouldn't know them in Florida, but New York, you'd know them. They are the most successful raw vegan juice company in the country, and it's called Juice Press. There's 90 locations. They're in every Equinox, and I helped that company when they first opened. A friend of mine started that company, and when they went to 3 stores, they got a big investment, and they were going to expand to a lot more stores. And the owner called me and said, I need your help, because I had a food background. I worked in food for a long time, and I just have kind of an OCD psychopathic brain. So he said it would be really helpful if you came on. So I worked with them for about a year, going from 3 stores to 30 stores to make sure your experience was the same in every location that you went to, that everything tasted the same, the vibe felt the same. I would spend the day just walking from store to store and explaining to staff what we're about, you know? But then I hate the food business. So I left amicably, but I just left. And he and I stay friends. I've known him since literally before I'm born. His name's Marcus. And his mother and my mother were friends. And when I was pregnant, he's a year older than when I was pregnant. My mom was pregnant. He was already born, and my mother said, touch my belly. So he met me before I was born, literally, which is kind of funny. So we've stayed friends the whole time, and he sold Juice Press and had a non-compete for a year. So he thought, let me start a podcast to start building my brand. And he didn't want to do it alone. He asked me to do it with him. And the idea was to try and make me a better person. That was the beginning of the show. The first name of it was called, because he was trying to guide me to a better place.
Right.
And I'm analytical and don't believe a lot of stuff. So we called it the Sherpa and the Schmuck, right? But if you're not Jewish, you don't know what schmuck means. And if you're not over 30 or have never been to the Himalayas, you don't know what a Sherpa is. So it was a little too niche-y. And the name of his restaurant that he's opening is called Good Sugar. So we switched it to the Good Sugar podcast.
Nice.
And the whole idea is make me a better person. That was the idea.
Well, I think the idea of syndication kind of follows you around your life. I mean, that you did for him what you did for your radio show.
And then with him, I put this out, which is the 100% guaranteed guide to weight loss and fitness that went to number 77 on Amazon. I put it out last Christmas, and page 1 is eat less. Page 2 is work out more, and then the rest of the book is blank.
Oh my gosh.
And I stand by it. If you do it and you don't lose weight, I will give you your money back.
Right. I mean, common sense. And that's kind of what you get listening to your podcast too.
That's what made me laugh, because we brought on Good Sugar all these unique like health and wellness gurus. The guy that started Beachbody On Demand, the guy that trains all the Marvel superheroes, like from Scarlett Johansson to Chris Hemsworth, Kevin Hart's guy. His name is Boss or something like that. But he's got like 5 million followers on Instagram. He's like all these elite trainers and fitness gurus and wellness experts and blah blah blah. And I just laughed when they said they're all saying the fucking same thing: eat less and work out more, and you're going to get in better shape. And I, in the past year, have lost 50 pounds. I know I was always in good shape until my father died, and I got depressed and gained 60 pounds. And so now I'm almost back to where I was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So
and
now-
I actually I credit the podcast because it gave me accountability. Every week I had to come on the show like, what did you do this week? And I was like, I don't know, I had ice cream. Like, I can't say that, you know? So I started running, which I had never run before in my life. I couldn't run 20 seconds when I started a year ago.
And you did
now
couch to 5K, right?
Couch to 5K, then a 10K,
Does
then a
wonders.
15K. And I just ran my first half marathon last week.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not lighting the world on fire with my time, but
No,
I
but
still, I
It's-
ran
Yeah, you're
consistently.
still doing the damn thing.
I did it consistently, 13.2 miles for 2 hours and 35 minutes. Never stopped
Wow.
once.
wow.
Crazy. Yeah,
So
it was
since
nuts.
you're a health and wellness guru now,
Now
I,
I am. I like
want to
say that.
ask you, how do you relax? Like, you have so much going on.
Well,
What do you do to relax?
I used to shit on this all the time, but it really does make a difference. Is meditation, right? And I am not a believer in anything, but the way it was put to me, which I really do agree with, is you won't feel better when you're doing it, but you will notice it if you stop. And that's how I felt. A couple weeks ago, I had to go to I went to Miami to surprise my mom for Mother's Day,
Yeah.
and just was flying back for like 2-3 days. I didn't meditate. I remember I came home and I just felt like I think it's a Jewish word, but someone said it's an Italian word. I had agita. Like, I just felt
Yeah.
out of place, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I hadn't meditated in like 3 days. So then I just started doing that again. Also, there's a book I really recommend called Chatter, and that author came on Good Sugar, and it's all about how to manage your inner voice. And I mean, there's great lessons in that book. I think it's a fantastic book. I've been recommending it to everybody
I got to check that out.
because it's also science-based. I don't like mumbo jumbo. Show me a peer-reviewed paper to back up what you're talking about, and I'll listen. Just because you had a good experience with something means nothing to me.
So what do you do for meditating? Like, do you do a certain app? Do you just do from
I
whatever you feel
started-
within?
Because I couldn't do it on my own normally, I have a virtual reality gaming system called the Quest.
I've heard of it's a
Oh
certain
my
app,
God, I
right?
got to
It's an
friend
app,
you on
yeah.
there. I have it too.
Oh, I don't play as much anymore, to be honest with you. But there's an app called Trip, TRIPP.
Oh, that's
And-
good, huh?
It's really good, especially if you can't do it without it, which I couldn't. So I
Right.
did that for like a month, and then finally said, all right, let me try without it. And then the second segue was Peloton has a guided meditation.
Oh.
So I did that. And then now I'm at the point where when I wake up in the morning, I can just sit there and just focus on nothing for, let's say, 3 to 5 minutes. I just do 3 to 5 minutes a day. And that has helped me tremendously. Plus, by the way, not that I'm eating great, but eating better helps you not feel so shitty
Yeah.
Oh, for
and
sure.
immediately start feeling clarity and being able to not feel so wound up because your body's not focused on all the crap that's in your system.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, your co-hosts, like, I know Big J is your co-host
Main one,
for
yeah.
SDR, but every time I've been there, he's not been there. So your other co-hosts, they're so interesting. They're so different.
Yeah, I try to mix it up. So in a perfect world, Jay would do it every time. I love Jay. And the first 2 years of the show, when good guests were brought to me, if Jay couldn't do it, I felt it was too important to the identity of the show at that point. I would pass on the guest.
Oh,
And I
wow.
gave up so many. We gave up Guns N' Roses once. And it wasn't Axl and Slash, but it was 2 guys from Guns N' Roses. And I just said, Jay can't do it. I don't think it felt right. But after 2 years, once I felt the show had established itself, I always ask Jay first. And if he can't do it, I'm not going to say no. And that's how, like, this year, thanks to COVID, we got guests that normally we would never get because everybody was home. We had Ray Romano on. I mean, that's crazy. You know, we got so many big guests this year that we would have never gotten because of COVID. Everyone's home, but Jay couldn't do it 80% of the time. So I said, well, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do it. Like this week alone, I'm taping 5 episodes because I'll do it when the guests can do it. We just had Brittany Furlan on from Tommy Lee's
Tommy's wife. Yeah,
she has like 8 million followers. It's crazy, and she's very cool. But I just finished that when I came onto this, and tomorrow we have we had Counting Crows on this week, who was awesome, the singer of Counting Crows, and just when a good guest comes, I'm not going to try. Ideally, especially now because you can't. I always try to used to force them to Wednesday nights at 9, but nowadays no one's coming into the city. What are you gonna do? Yeah. So you take it when they can do it.
My favorite interview was one you did by yourself, you and Aaron from AWOL Nation.
AWOL Nation. He was super cool. Yeah, I like having the ability to have somebody chime in and put in jokes if I need filler. Yeah. So normally I don't. That's why I like having someone else around just to be there. They might take up 5 minutes of an hour, but that 5 minutes was 5 minutes I could figure out where the interview is going next.
Right.
What didn't we talk about? How far can I push this guy? I don't want him to get mad, but everyone wants to know about this or what, so you feel that having that breather helps a lot with reorganizing where to go.
Yeah. So how do you communicate with them during the show, or do you only have people that know you really well and know your...
I think, the first few episodes are always a little harder, but you start, as anyone that's doing it long enough, I feel, especially in person, harder over Zoom, but everything's harder over Zoom. And so I don't think it even gets picked up as much because we're just all used to choppy interviews on Zoom and like delays and stepping over each other because it is what it is. But in person, there's cues that you can just see. Like I can always tell, I can see out of my peripheral, oh, Jay's got a great one-liner that's about to come out. Like I can always just see it, and he gets a twinkle in his eye, and I know he's got something really funny to say. You can just see it.
I found your co-host particularly funny when you did the interview with, oh God, it was the guy from Atreyu.
Oh yeah, Brandon. Yeah, that was it James? I think it might have been James.
Yeah,
was it James Madden?
He kept egging him on about that fight.
Oh yeah, it was James Madden. Yeah, about fighting Logan Paul. Yeah, it was really funny. Yeah, that was funny. That was a fun episode. He was awesome. Like that was a guy. That was a pleasant surprise. I didn't know what to expect by him. You watch interviews, you don't know for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't know like how well. Like I interviewed this guy recently. The band was called Fallout. No, not Fallout Boy. What were they called? Fire something. 5 on Fire or something.
The Gods?
No, I feel horrible now that I'm going to forget them, but let me just look really quickly. I feel they deserve me mentioning them. And I watched 2 interviews with this guy. When you look them up, the first interview that came on is the one I looked at, right? Mm-hmm. And the guy just seemed like a real douchebag, but in his defense, Fame on Fire, that's the name of the band. Oh. And in his defense, the interviewer was terrible too. But it was the newest interview. And so, all right, let me just watch this. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's going to be terrible. But, we already booked it. What you can do? And he was the nicest guy in the world. And so once we started to get okay, I can joke around with this guy vibe, I told him, dude, I got to tell you, I watched an interview with you. You look like a fucking jackass. And he knew the interview. And he said, he'd been debating whether or not to ask that guy to take it down because he knew how bad he looked. And right after that interview, he went and asked the guy to take it down because he knew he looked like a jackass. It's funny. But with Brandon, he ended up being a super cool dude. And now he is one of 4. We do a drug episode once a year on SDR because I have never done any drugs. So once a year, I try a drug on the show, right?
Wow.
And I've tried 5 drugs.
Dedication.
Already. Yeah. Hated them all, tried them all for the first time, never again. But now we're doing one once the world opens up, probably the end of this year, I would imagine we can. And we have like 5 rock stars that are going to fly in to do the drug with me. They're all like, whatever it is, we'll fucking do it. So we're working that out for hopefully the end of the year.
Wow. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that one.
I fucking hate every drug. I have hated every drug.
Oh, man.
I'm not made for drugs. My body's not made for it.
No, I guess it's a good thing.
Yeah, I hate it. I still have the leftover. of every drug we've done is still sitting in my apartment because I have no desire to do it.
Oh my God.
Don't broadcast that.
Yeah,
Probably get this
Not
question.
go to his apartment looking for drugs.
Yeah. FBI, don't watch this.
Yeah.
Well, people ask us, like, how are you doing cocaine on a show? I'm like, well, they can't prove it's cocaine. We're just going to say it's a bit. How can they prove it? You know, we called it milk powder because that's what they use in the movies for fake cocaine, but it was pretty obviously cocaine, you know.
Yeah, we're acting a little funny after it.
And I can now say the only time I've ever done cocaine in my life was snorting it off of a porn star's ass. And that's the only time I'll ever do it.
You know? It's worth it, I guess.
And with that, I know you have your show coming up in 15 minutes.
Yes.
So I thank you so much for your time. It's always
Any
a lot
last
of fun
final questions or no? Do you have? I know Shelby, it seemed like you were about to ask.
I was just gonna say something really quick. You might get asked this a lot, but just like kind of closing, what advice would you give anyone who wants to start a podcast? If anyone's listening and they want to start a podcast, a radio show, anything like that.
So I'm asked this a lot. You're right.
Yeah, I figured.
And so if you Google my name and entrepreneur.com, I was fortunate enough to be on the front page of entrepreneur.com last year on how to start a podcast for next to no money, right? My advice to everyone, this is a different landscape than 7 years ago when I started. You can start for free today, right? So if you can't just start, you don't have to worry about the rest of it later. Worry about editing and imaging and what it's going to sound like. And you're going to hate the first 10 episodes you record anyway. So just start. And if you can't get to that point when there's literally no barrier to entry, you download what's it called? Anchor
FM.
Yeah, Anchor FM. And you can talk into your phone in 10 minutes and launch a podcast. If you can't get to that point, you're never going to do it. Because when I had to do it, you had to build your own RSS feed. You had to pay for your own host. You had to figure out, you had to manually submit to every single platform. That's not the case anymore. They take care of it. So all you got to do is talk. And you'd be amazed how many people ask me that. I say that and say, to be nice, hey, when you record your first episode, send it to me. Never hear from 99% of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy how it never happens. People just want to be handed a show with 200,000 listeners and just take over. But that's not how it works.
Yeah, you have to build it up.
Everyone knows how to hustle like you do, you know?
Exactly.
But I appreciate that. But these days, you don't even need to hustle. Just download
Anchor
a free app.
FM. Yeah. So easy.
And then worry about the rest. There's so much more to it with the editing and the SEO and the cover art. But you don't need to worry about any of that right now. Just start. Just get it going. And if you can't do that, you never will. And also, if you think you're going to make money, wait some time. You're not going to make money right away. So you're doing it because you want to do it. If you're worrying about money right away, you're in the wrong business.
I can say that about the entire entertainment business.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. If you won't do it for free, you're not passionate about it.
Right.
I remember when I had my radio show and I was still strip club DJing at the time, this bouncer came up to me and said, dude, my whole life I've been dying to get into radio. I've never known how to do it. I said, look, I'll make you a deal, man. Come in Saturday, come in a little early. I'll show you the board. I'll teach you the basic things. Why not? I'll help you out. And he goes, oh my God, that's amazing. And then he just not only didn't show up, didn't call, nothing. Just next week, I come back to the strip club. He's like, oh, I got sidetracked. I said, dude, I gave you an option that no one gave me ever. And you just blew me off. You can never come into the studio now. So there you go. Seize your opportunities. That's the moral of the story.
That's it.
Yes. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And in my infinite desire to plug everything, follow me everywhere at I am Ralph Sutton. I believe in social symmetry. Follow the SDR Show everywhere at the SDR Show. Follow Gas Digital everywhere at Gas Digital. And Good Sugar is at goodsugar.life. And everywhere there as well. And that's all for me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I will be talking to you probably tomorrow.
Oh, cool. That's exciting. And then I'll leave you with this. Oops. Here he is. Mini-me.
Ooh, gosh.
All right.
I love it.
Awesome.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.